Please join me in prayers. Vakratunda Mahakaya Koti Surya Samaprabha Nirvignam Kurume Deva Sarvakaryeshu Sarvada Sarve Bhavantu Sukhinah Sarve Santu Niramayaha Sarve Bhadrani Pashyantu Ma Kaschit Dukkha Bhag Bhavet Om Sahana Vavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu Ma Vidvishavahai Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Good morning, dear friends. It is with a very heavy heart that I share with you the very sad news that our dear friend, Dr. Kumud Sane, passed away on January 1, 2022, surrounded by her loving family. She is survived by her husband, Dr. Shashikant Sane, daughter Smita Bailey and her children, son Dr. Shekhar Sane and his wife Lara Sane and their children. So she leaves behind her husband and 4 grandchildren and 2 children. Before I begin my scheduled talk, I would like to share with you some personal thoughts on Kumud. These are from over 40 years of knowing her through the temple activities. Though her footprint on the community was very large, I will confine myself to sharing with you my personal thoughts. Kumud Sane was a gracious lady. She was kind, courteous, pleasant, polite, thoughtful, and friendly. She was a great devotee of God and possessed the qualities of a bhakta or devotee, as Lord Krishna enunciated in the Gita. He devotes the entire chapter, chapter 12, to bhakti. Adveshta sarva bhutanam maitraha karuna evacha nirmamo nirahankaraha samadhukha sukhakshami. One who hates none, who is friendly and compassionate to all, who is free from attachment and egoism, balanced in pleasure and pain, and forgiving, such a devotee is dear to me. Kumud Sane was such a devotee. Krishna also assures us in Bhagavad Gita, in chapter 9, Rajavidya Rajaguhya Yoga, Name Bhakta Pranashyati. My devotee never perishes. And Kumud, a great devotee that she was, is now resting peacefully in the abode of God. She has attained moksha. Whenever she saw me at the temple, with a big smile, she would always say, "Hello, Prasanna, how are you?" And if she didn't see my wife Usha, she would say, "Where is Usha? How is she? How is she doing?" She always was inquiring about the welfare of us and our family. During the discourses on Gita that Dr. Sane led, and I assisted him sometimes, she would offer valuable comments during the discussion time. For example, verse number 32 in chapter 9, "For those who take refuge in me, O Partha, though they be women, Vaishyas, and Shudras, even they attain the supreme goal." This particular verse would elicit great comments from Kumud. And she led the discussion as to why we should not take the verse literally and look for the implied meaning. So the conversation that was led by her led her to discuss the implications of the literal meaning versus the implied meaning, which means we have to think carefully about the verse before understanding it. She was very knowledgeable in the Hindu scriptures, and she knew Gita very well. She was a disciple of the late Swami Dayananda. One of our favorite verses in the Bhagavad Gita comes in chapter 6, Abhyasa Yoga. Lif uddharet atmanatmanam natmanam avasadayet atmaiva shatmano bandhuhu atmaiva ripuratmanaha. Lift yourself by yourself. Do not degrade yourself, because the self is your own friend and your own enemy. She explained the implied meaning of this verse during one of the Gita discourses at the temple. She firmly believed that this verse is a wake-up call to those of us who have not risen to our God-given full potential. And she believed that this verse should be remembered by everybody. I still remember her discourse on the Prashna Upanishad at the old temple on Port Street. She was able to simplify the 6 questions asked by the 6 devotees and the answers given by the teacher to each of these questions. And she made the explanation very simple so that the essential message could be imparted. She encouraged me to analyze the evolution of female characters in the Mahabharata that led me to examine the lives of Gandhari, Kunti, and Draupadi, starting from Adi Parva to Swargarohana Parva. I might not have embarked on this study, but for her encouragement and support. She attended all the summer youth camps that were organized by Dr. Shashi Sane and took great interest in the health and well-being of the camp goers. My son, Dr. Sanjay Kumar, remembers fondly the many chats he had with her during the summer camps. Later on, after he graduated from college, he sought her advice when he was thinking of going to medical school, and eventually he did go to medical school. He sent me a very nice email reminiscing his interactions with her at the camp. In her professional life as a pediatrician, she was highly respected and was the go-to doctor for multiple generations of Indian patients. Many of the children who came to the summer camp were her patients, and now those children have grown up. This was in the 80s, remember. Those children have grown up and have their own children, and they were also patients of Dr. Kumud Sane. May God give strength to her family at this difficult time. May God rest her soul in peace. Professor Rambachan would like to share a few thoughts about Dr. Kumud Sane with us. After that, I would request all of you to stand up and observe a minute of silence before the regular talk begins. Thank you. Anant?
Thank you very much, Professor Kumar. Oh, dear Shashi and friends, I'm grateful for this opportunity to say a few words in honor of Kumud ji. Prasanna has already spoken so eloquently about her, and I know that we will have an opportunity later this year in the summer to gather together to honor her memory and all of her gifts to us. Kumudji's passing is a loss, a deep loss to her family, but also to each of us and to the community in so many ways. She befriended us with Shashi when we first came to the United States about 3.5 decades ago. In fact, her home was the very first home that we visited after coming to the United States. And I always remember that day when she welcomed Geeta and I into her home. And it was the beginning of a long and beautiful relationship with Kumudji. As Prasanna said, she was kind, she was loving, she was hospitable and friendly to everyone. And of course, as he also mentioned, she became the pediatrician for our first child, our daughter, Ishana. So we had the opportunity to see her often during those visits. In addition to all the wonderful personal qualities that she exemplified as a compassionate, and a caring human being and a professional, Kumudji was a servant of the community. In fact, when the history of the Hindu community is written, Kumud's name will feature prominently in that account. Because even before this community gathered in North Minneapolis at Polk Street, Kumud was already involved in the formation of that community, in the Gita meetings in various homes with her husband, Dr. Sane. This is where the seeds of the current community were first laid. And from there to Polk Street, and now to the beautiful temple in Maple Grove. At every step of that journey, she was there. And our community today is also a legacy of her and of her husband, Dr. Shashi Sane. And it was not only as a worker in the community, but I want to also lift up the comment of Prasanna about her. And this is that she exemplified a very deep and profound interest in the Hindu religious tradition as a practitioner and as a lifelong student. All of us here in satsang this morning will remember something about her, which speaks to the depth of this interest. And it's very rare nature. In Bhagavad Gita, Sri Krishna says, Manushya nam sahasreshu kaschit yatati siddhaye. Among thousands and thousands of people, one is ardent in seeking to know me. And all of us will remember that image, even as her health failed. And from her bed, with Shashi at her side, she joined our satsangs. Even from her bed of illness, she sought to continue participating, to understand. And there are not many people who would have that kind of deep interest. She was very learned, as Prasanna said. After meeting Swami Dayananda Saraswati, she with Shashi became his disciples. And not only distant disciples, but made it a part of their sadhana, a part of their lives, to visit him from time to time, whenever possible. And I know that this was a very important relationship for both of them, one that endured until Swami Dayananda Saraswati attained Maha Samadhi. But all of these speak to the qualities of Kumudji as a human being and as a deeply devoted religious person. I will miss her deeply. We will miss her deeply. We will miss the warmth of her greetings. And it's interesting that Prasanna said that, she would not only be missed by those of us who share her generation, who come from her own generation, but she had built a relationship with a younger generation through the camps. And all of them know her, and all of them are sad that we have lost Kumud. at least in this plane of existence. And so to conclude, dear Shashi and friends, from the text that she loved so much and which she knew how to recite in beautiful metrical verses, I just want to recite 3 verses from the Bhagavad Gita, and then to pass on back to Prasanna Kumar for his pravachan this morning. These verses come from chapter 2 of Srimad Bhagavad Gita. I know that all of you will recognize these verses that speak of the immortal nature of the human self, of the Atman. Vasamsi jirnani yatha vihaya navani grinnati naroparani tatha sharirani vihaya jirnani anyani samyati navani dehi nainam chindanti shastrani nainam dahati pavakaha nachainam kledayantyapo nasoshayati marutaha अच्छेर्यो यमदाह्योऽयं अक्लेर्यो सोष्य एव च नित्य सर्वगतस्थानो अचलोऽयं सनातनः हरिः ओम श्री गुरुभ्यो नमः हरिः ओम. May Sri Krishna grant our dear beloved Kumud ji peace and joy at his eternal feet. Thank you very much, dear friends.
Will you please observe a minute of silence in her honor? Thank you very much. And now I will proceed with my talk on Dhana, Dhana Dharma, Dhana or charitable giving. When the Pandavas were in the forest, the Vanavasa, on the 12th year, sage Vyasa pays a visit to them. Yudhishthira greets him with honor and waits anxiously for what Vyasa is going to say. Vyasa saw on Yudhishthira's face very troubled, wrinkled face. He knew Yudhishthira was in great mental agony, and Vyasa knew that Yudhishthira was a strong person, but he was not quite sure as to why he was agonizing so much. So he said, in this world, Yudhishthira, everyone is subject to sorrow and happiness. Self-realized people do not rejoice forever the happiness that befalls them, nor do they wallop in sorrow for all the ill fortunes that may come to them. They maintain an even keel, realizing fully that the experience of dualities is a part of life. One should enjoy the good fortunes and tolerate bravely the sorrows. Living a truthful life, sharing one's good fortune with others, restraining anger, not harboring jealousy, not harming others, restraining the senses, are all part of those who are realized souls. And Yudhishthira, you're one of them. Karma follows the karmi, and one should try to perform actions that are within the orbit of dharma. Yudhishthira then asks, O Mahamuni, between the dharma of dana and tapas, which is superior and what is your recommendation? Vyasa says, Yudhishthira, there is nothing that is more difficult than dana or giving. It is the nature of people to accumulate wealth, and many find it difficult to share their wealth with others. Na dushkarataram danat tasmat danam matam mama. There is nothing that is so difficult as giving. If one gives even a little with a pure heart to a deserving person, the fruit of that unselfish action is enormous, says Vyasa Mahamuni to Yudhishthira. Remember that we make a living by what we get, but we make a life by what we give. Winston Churchill said that. We make a living by what we get, but we make a life by what we give. Dhana, charitable giving, generosity, donation, gift, endowment, etc., has its roots in the Vedas. Yajamana, one who undertakes a yajna, would gift Brahmins with cows. It is called Godana. Sri Krishna says in Moksha Sannyasa Yoga that the acts of sacrifice, charity, and austerity, yajna, dana, and tapas, should never be given up, but should be performed. Sacrifice, charity, and austerity are purifying to the wise. We have a duty towards the world outside, and that duty is dana. We want to live in a world of cooperative action and mutual respect. We must respect the welfare of others and recognize the value of their existence. This is the principle of dana or charity. Empathy and compassion are the foundations of dana. Empathy refers to our ability to take the perspective of and feel the emotions of another person. Compassion is when those feelings and thoughts include the desire to help. Dana is not merely giving a part of our material goods. Rather, it is an inward attitude of respect for others, inasmuch as the self in me is the same self in you. The feeling of love and affection and a spontaneous sense of giving rather than taking is the essence of dana. We perform charity not because we are rich and the others are poor. The reason is different. Others are equally important and have as much right to exist as we ourselves have. Charity is the extension of goodwill to others. It is called parahita, caring for others. This is our duty to the world of beings, even as we have a duty towards God. To summarize, giving dana is a sacred act. One should give from what one has earned by rightful means. One should be weary of giving beyond one's means, thus putting his or her family in peril. Rules concerning time, place, and occasion should be observed as far as possible. Vidya dana, anna dana, bhudana, pranadana, dravya dana, vastradana, etc. are to be observed. The joy of giving is indescribable because it takes courage to give something from your life to others. It's not easy. When the Devas, Asuras, and Manavas went to Prajapati for advice, he gave each one of them the same advice. Daya, compassion for the Asuras. Dhamma, self-restraint for the Devas. And Dana, generosity for the Manavas. This comes in Brihadaranyaka Upanishad. Annadana. When you sponsor lunch over the weekends at the Hindu temple, you are doing annadana. When you donate a bag of rice, tur dal, can of cooking oil, a bag of sugar, etc. to the temple, you are doing annadana. And the temple always collects non-perishable items to be given to the food shelves. And if you participate in that drive, you're doing annadana. When a landowner deeds part of the land to the farmer who has been taking care of the land in raising vegetables, fruits, and flowers, he is doing bhudana. When you put money in the hundi at the temple, you're doing dravyadana. When you anonymously pay off the debt of someone, you're doing dravyadana. When you donate an organ, a kidney, a liver, a heart, maybe, to save the life of another, you're doing pranadana. When you donate clothes to others, you're doing vastradana. The temple collects clothes like winter jackets, mittens, socks, etc., to be donated to people who don't have them. And then if you donate them, you're doing Vasudhana. Endowing scholarships to needy students, running gurukulas, volunteering to prepare students for PSAT, SAT, MCAT, LCAT, etc., you're doing Vidyadhana. Vidyadhana is the famous Gurukula. So in a Gurukula, a student goes in for 2 or 3 years to study the scriptures, and he doesn't have to pay anything. All his needs are taken care of, and that is Vidyadhana. Then, of course, in the modern times, we have internet dana, donating cash to go fund for me sites. That's internet dana. And then somebody might ask you, I don't have money to give. I don't have clothes to give. I am not knowledgeable enough to teach somebody. What can I do? Well, not to despair. Assurance of our help and companionship to others is what is called abhayadana. We should all practice that when people are in trouble, even if you are not able to help them directly, if you assure them, I am by your side, I will do the best I can, I will not leave you alone, that would be abhayadana. Lord Krishna, in Bhagavad Gita, in chapter 17, talks about 3 types of dana. That gift which is made to one who can make no return, with the feeling that it is one's duty to give, and which is given at the right place and time, and to a worthy person, that gift is sattvika. A gift that is given with the expectation of getting something back in return is not a gift. It is merely an exchange of hospitality. A sattvic gift is the gift which is given voluntarily with a pure heart. The recipient of your dana may not be in any position to repay you. He is desperately in need of help. You see the situation and give voluntarily, share with the unfortunate your blessings. Your attitude is more important than the magnitude. Remember that we receive by giving. We grow by sharing. We have to give what is given to us. We are merely the custodians and not owners of what we have. Dana is charitable giving. Then he says, and the gift that is given with the view to receive in return or looking for the fruit of, or again grudgingly, is called rajasika dana. If you must give with humility and without publicity. Then there is sanctity in your giving. If you must give because you are compelled to, and you accede to this grudgingly, then your gift belongs to Rajasika class. A Rajasika gives grudgingly, even minuscule gifts. Even then, he expects it to be noticed by all and praised by all for the generosity shown, given willingly in accordance with your capacity. There was a poor man who had a wife and 2 children. The family was very devout and was observing fasting for a vrata. He managed to obtain a small quantity of flour, and his wife made 4 rotis, chapatis. At the end of the vrata, they wanted to eat the chapatis. At that time, a beggar came and pleaded hunger. The family gives him 1 roti. The beggar asked for more, and they gave the remaining 3 also. After the beggar left pleased, the family had nothing to eat, and being very weak due to their failing fasting, they all died. Just then, a squirrel came there and rolled on the ground. Half its body became golden yellow. Amazed at this, the squirrel thought that this family must have been very generous and sattvic givers. It began to go to all places where gifts were given and rolled in the dirt there. But the other half of the squirrel did not turn color. It heard that Dharmaraja was conducting a great horse sacrifice and was giving gifts generously. Krishna wanted to teach Dharmaraja the meaning of sattvic gift. When the squirrel came there and started rolling in the dirt, the assembly was perplexed and wondered what was going on. When the scroll's other half did not turn golden, it addressed Dharmaraja and said, "No doubt you have given generously to the people, yet your gifts are not sattvic. If they were, I would have turned golden." Hearing this, all the assembled people were stunned. Then Lord Krishna addressed the assembly, recounted the entire story of the scroll, and taught them the meaning of sattvic giving. Also, you find Nachiketa's father, when he was giving away unproductive cows and so on, how Nachiketa scolded him. The gift that is given at the wrong place or time to unworthy person without respect or with insult, that is described as tamasic gift. It is as if you are saying, "Go away, don't pester me. Here, take this diamond, get lost." There was a wealthy man. He would throw coins at people who came to him for help without even asking for their names, circumstances in life, etc. He had a disdaining attitude towards them. He was tamasic. He would force food on a friend who had just eaten, but would shun the pleas of a hungry beggar at his door. In order to please the friend, he would throw stale food at the beggar, and that is called tamasic gift. Then later on, you find in the Mahabharata, what are the benefits, differences among the various kinds of charity? What benefits arise from these types of charity? How should one go about engaging in religious, righteous activity? What are the circumstances and reasons for charity? I'm interested to learn all about this. This is what Yudhishthira asked Bhishma. And Bhishma responds, "Kaunteya, the sinless one, let me tell you how one should go about in giving charity. Dharma, righteousness, artha, security, fear, desire, and compassion are the 5 reasons why one gives charity. Therefore, know that there are 5 types of giving. Let me tell you the reasons for giving. If one gives with no malice or jealousy for the well-being of the recipient here and hereafter, this type of giving is called charity rooted in dharma." I won't read you the Sanskrit script. I'll just give you the English translation. The recipient might say, "He is charitable. He continues to be charitable. He gave me these kinds of charity, etc., thus extolling the virtues of the donor. If the donor gives charity based on hearing such accolades, this type of charity is said to be rooted in attaining fame, name, and honor. Examples are a stadium naming rights, named professorships, named buildings, etc. And this brings me to an interesting topic. Should charity be given anonymously, or should there be name attached to it? There are 2 sides to this story. One of them, with the founder of Broadcom, an internet company in California, he was a professor, Samueli. He was a professor of engineering at UCLA. He and his graduate student founded this company, which became very successful, and he became a billionaire. And they gave $200 million to UCLA, and the engineering building is named after Samuel. And he said he does not believe in anonymous giving. He said, because in Silicon Valley, there are lots of people with plenty of money. If they see my name on a building, they may be tempted to better me and give more money to the charity of their choice. Therefore, I believe that one should put their name when they give charity and not be anonymous. Yet, there are other stories too. I know for a fact that when I was at the dean's office, there were 2 or 3 charitable contributions amounting to millions of dollars that came, but with one stipulation: the donors did not want their name to be known, ever. Almost 20 years since I left the dean's office, the names are still not known. I know them, but nobody else knows them. So there are two sides to the coin. It's up to individuals as to whether they want to have their names attached to the charity or give anonymously. And this discussion of Bhishma and Yudhishthira appears in the Anushasana Parva or Dhana Dharma Parva, 5 types of charity. Then the third type of charity is, I am not related to him. He is not my lineage. Even then, if I don't give, he may get angry and cause me harm. Thinking thus, if one gives charity, this type of charity is said to be rooted in fear. Examples, political donations from corporations, wealthy individuals, etc., to political campaigns. If I don't give, I'm afraid that he might tweet wrong things about me, say angry things about me, say mad things about me. Therefore, I better give and let him not get into his bad books. That type of charity is said to be rooted in fear. He is very dear to me. I'm very fond of him. Thinking thus, a man of wisdom gives willingly and with a pleasant attitude. This type of charity is said to be rooted in love. This is the most kind of charity that Bhishma emphasizes we should all practice. He is very poor and seeking alms. He is satisfied even with a small amount of charity. So charity itself has so many different facets to it. And during the time of giving, which is during the holiday season, you probably hear on the television so many organizations asking for help, whether it be the Children's Hospital, whether it be the veterans of disabled veterans of America, or whether it be Red Cross or Salvation Army. But we all have a duty to share the benefits that we have obtained in this world. And remember that what we have made in this world is not entirely due to our own individual effort. There are so many other people that have contributed to our success in life. No doubt, we have put in our effort. Without our own personal effort, nothing would happen. But we should also remember our teachers who gave us all the knowledge necessary for us to become successful. We should also acknowledge the family and friends who helped us throughout our lives. Considering all of these things, I think we should not be hesitant in giving willingly and lovingly without expecting anything in return to worthy causes. Whether you want to give anonymously or you want your name attached to it, please don't bother. The bottom line is, if you're able to, just give whatever it is that you can afford to the cause. For example, in today's Minneapolis Star Tribune, in the obituary of Dr. Kumud Sane, there's a last line which says, please do not send any flowers or any cards. Please donate to the Hindu temple. And they give a URL. So you click on it, and then there's a special place where it goes into in the name of Dr. Kumud Sane. And so I urge you, all of you, to take a look at that. To look at the obituary in the Star Tribune, and also the URL that is given there, and contribute as much as you possibly can to the temple in memory of Kumud Sane, who was instrumental, one of the instrumental figures in establishing the temple. So before I go to the story of Mudgala, which is an interesting story, which exemplifies the Dhana that I am talking about, let me pause here and ask you a question from the audience, if you have any thoughts to share, whether you should give anonymously or whether you should give with your name attached to it. What are your thoughts? But nevertheless, I think whether you want to give anonymously or with your name attached to it, the important thing is the attitude that you have in providing the charity. And not because somebody is pressuring you, because you want to give. You want to give because it is your duty to do so. Krishna says, Dhana is your duty. Dhana is your duty. Yajna is your duty. Tapas is your duty. Yajna is the duty towards God. Yajna is not in the literal sense of the fire ritual, that is in trying to reach God, trying to understand your own self. The thing that you want to do is to sacrifice your ego, sacrifice your possessiveness, aham and mama. And this particular sacrifice in approaching God is what Krishna implies by saying yajna. You should never give it up. When tapas is austerity, austerity means living a life of discipline, not living a life of sensual pleasures, unlimited fun and games, etc. Sure, you should have pleasure, but everything should be done within certain limits. And that self-discipline is called tapas. That's what he says we should always practice. Shama, dhamma, titiksha, uparati, etc. should be part of your life. And we have talked about the third element that he talks about, Dhana, which is your duty to others, your duty to other people, and that is Dhana. So you have a duty to God, you have a duty to others, you have a duty to yourself. And these three duties should never, ever be abandoned, is what Krishna says in chapter 17. And there are a number of stories that come to Dhana. And this particular story appears in Dhana Dharma, Mahabharata, Vanaparva, and in chapters 260 and 261. Yudhishthira asked Vyasa to tell him in detail the story of Mudgala. He asks, why did Mudgala give away the food grains that he had collected with great difficulty? To whom did he give it? Tell me all the details. I want to know. I want to know. Then Vyasa tells him the story of Mudgala. There lived in Kurukshetra a great sage by the name of Mudgala. He was a righteous person, harboring no envy to others. He had complete mastery over his senses. After the farmers had gathered the grains, several would still be on the ground. Mudgala would spend a great deal of time and effort to pick these grains and collect them in a bag. He would then use this to feed his family. Though he had very little by way of food, he would never, ever turn away a guest. Twice a month, he would invite guests and share the food with them. He was God-centered in his life. I should tell you a strange thing about him. If a guest came to his house and there was only one grain in the cooking pot, it would multiply to fill the pot and feed the guest. Akshaya Patra. This enabled him to feed hundreds of Brahmins. His fame grew, and Maharshi Durvasa, of course, the son of Atri and Anusuya, he had heard about it. Durvasa donned tattered clothes, disheveled his hair, and came to Mudgala's hermitage. That is interesting, because who is Durvasa? Durvasa, literal meaning is one who is difficult to live with. Durvasa, one who is very difficult to live with. He is very short-tempered. He is said to have both cursed and gifted boons to several notable deities and people in the Hindu pantheon and mythos. Some of them include the curses. He cursed Indra, whom he cursed to lose all his powers after Indra's elephant Airavata threw down a rather fragrant garland given by Durvasa to Indra. Saraswati. He cursed Saraswati to be born as a human being because she laughed at his incorrect recitation of the Vedas. Rukmini, whom he cursed to be separated from Krishna, her husband, because she drank water without seeking Durvasa's permission. Shakuntala, who avoided Durvasa while at the ashrama of sage Kanva, which enraged Durvasa, who cursed her. Dushyanta would forget her. Durvasa later clarified that Dushyanta would remember her when she presented his ring that he had previously given to her. I'll talk about Shakuntala and Dushyanta and Shakuntala sometime later. Kandali, his wife, whom he cursed to be reduced to a heap of dust for excessively quarreling with him. He didn't want his wife to quarrel with him. Bhanumati, the daughter of Banu, the then leader of Yadavas. Bhanumati provoked Durvasa while playing at the garden of Raivata, and in response, Durvasa cursed her. She later in life was abducted by the Dhanava Nikumbha. However, Durvasa clarified, after being pacified, that no harm would come to Bhanumati and that she would be saved by and marry the Pandava Sahadeva. And boons, he has also given boons to Krishna, whom he blessed with partial invulnerability. The Anushasana Parva, as related by Krishna to his son, Pradyumna, details incident when Durvasa visited Krishna at Dwaraka and requested that Krishna smear his own body with the payasam remaining after Durvasa had eaten. Krishna complied with this, and Durvasa blessed him with invulnerability in those parts of his body that are covered with the payasam, noting that Krishna never smeared the soles of his feet with it. Krishna would die years later after the events of the Kurukshetra war by an arrow to his foot, shot by a hunter who mistook it for a deer. Kunti, whom he taught mantras capable of summoning a deva to beget children. Angaraj Karna, from use of the divining mantra by Kunti, and later the 5 Pandava brothers were born of Kunti and her co-wives Madri's use of mantra. So those are the curses and boons of Durvasa. So Durvasa came and told him, I have come here to eat, O best among Brahmins, please give me food. Mudgala greeted Durvasa, offered him water and a seat. He prepared meals for him. Durvasa gobbled up the food fast. Thinking that Durvasa was still hungry, Mudgala served him more food. Durvasa cleaned his plate, the cooking vessel, and licking his fingers, left the dining room. Since not a morsel of food was remaining in the cooking vessel, there was no opportunity for it to multiply. After Durvasa departed, Mudgala had nothing left to eat. Mudgala would continue to collect for leftover grains from the field. Every time he had collected enough, Durvasa would come and eat everything that Mudgala had. Mudgala did not have any grains left to feed his family or himself. Yet Mudgala kept his cool. He was not angry. He was not envious. Even his wife and children remained calm. It was Durvasa's intent to make Mudgala angry. He came to his house 6 times and ate everything that Mudgala had cooked. Yet he could not make Mudgala angry. He did not even see any sign of unhappiness on Mudgala's face. He decided to stop testing Mudgala and said, you are free of jealousy and you give generously. There is no one to match you. This is Durvasa telling this Mudgala. He continued, O Maharshi Mudgala, hunger is very cruel indeed. Hunger can make a person transgress dharma. The hungry one has no capacity to distinguish between right and wrong. His tongue is always seeking to taste food. Such a tongue can lead a man to commit great sins. All living creatures are foraging for food. Man is a slave to food. Mind is fickle and cannot be restrained easily. Restraining the mind and practice of meditation are essential to spiritual progress, and they cannot be accomplished if you are hungry. And there are a number of stories to illustrate how hunger can distort one's path of dharma. Vishwamitra was a famous example, where he go to Chandala's house to steal a piece of dog meat when he was very hungry. And I'll tell that story sometime later. It contains valuable insights into human behavior when one is hungry, when how one can distort one's understanding of Dharma under the pressure of a hungry stomach. A student who is very hungry cannot learn. This has been quite well established. This is the reason why in many schools they provide food to the children who come in the morning so that they can have a full stomach before the classes begin, because it's very difficult to learn when your stomach is constantly calling for food. Let me stop here and I'll continue next week the story and another story that illustrates the importance of Dhana. Let me just stop here and see if you have any comments. Yeah.
Couple of points on the thing that you mentioned about giving. Thank you for going through the discourse. It was very insightful for us, both Anandi and me. The point is, the dhanam should be done with no expectations. And you mentioned about the two cases where one case, if you have the person's name, that will be an incentive to other people to do the same thing. And the other case where people want to be anonymous, the view is that you give because you want to give with no expectations. That's number one. And using that as a kind of a self-promotion is something that is absolutely not desirable, and that we find quite a bit of that. One of the key lines in this, in the temple arati, Jai Jagadishwar Hare, which says that Tera tujhko arpan kya lage mera. So whatever we give, we just give back. Whatever has been given to us, we're just giving back. And so the dana should be done with no expectations. And that's kind of my view of how you provide people charitable contribution or work or help. Thank you.
Yeah, well taken. Yeah, I think, again, it's up to the individuals, what they want to, but the important thing is just give. Yeah, if somebody were to come to the temple tomorrow and say, here is $20 million for the endowment fund, but I want the community hall to be named after me. Well, so be it.
Prasanna?
Yeah.
This is Shashikanta. Just want to express my gratitude to you and Anant about speaking about my dear one. And Kumud, according to our Shastras, is considered a Ardhangini for a husband. But for me, she was Purnangini. That means she was complete person for me. And I want to express my gratitude to her for fulfilling my life. And I can assure you that without her presence in my life, I would not have been able to pursue and hopefully completed the spiritual quest in this existence. So I want to express my gratitude to her. And I want you to remember that only through the friends like you that I can survive without her mortal existence. So thank you. It's difficult to continue about telling the information about charity because there's so much to talk about it. But I think only one of the verses from Taittiriya Upanishad that comes to my mind, which says, Shraddhaya deyam, ashraddhaya no deyam, Priya deyam, Priya deyam, Samvida deyam. So you have to give it with an attitude of thankfulness to God for where He has bestowed upon us, because He knows the best. You have to give it till it hurts. And you give the story of that. I call it mongoose. You call different animals' name. At the Pandavas, Yajna, that was a beautiful one. I'll tell you a story about Riyadeyam. That means give it when the need is there. Typically, many of the successful people have a tendency to get it to their head, their ego. So Arjuna one day was complaining to Sri Krishna, you keep on telling me that Karna is a true Dhana, that's the real Dhana. You don't praise me when I donate the things. And he could see, just like Yudhishthira had an ego problem of donating even the yajna, Sri Krishna realized what Arjuna was trying to say. He said, he created a situation through Maya where an old, tired Brahmin comes home and says, I need chandan for the cremation of my wife who just passed away. And he asked Arjuna, why don't you arrange for it? And Arjuna sends his servants to a local shop to get chandan, which the stock had run out. So he said, Brahmin, I'm sorry, I can't give it to you because there is no stock available. I would have given you all of it. And he said, ask Karna to do the same thing. His servants went to the same shop and of course were given the same answer. And as he was telling that to the poor Brahmin, he suddenly stopped him. He said, wait, even though there is no sandalwood available in the market, I'll get it to you. So he goes and says, one of the house that I'm living in has the beams made of sandalwood. So he takes a saw and cuts off the beam and gives the entire piece of wood to that poor Brahmin. And in that process, that part of the house collapses. And when that happened, Shri Krishna stopped his story. This is what the real Dhanam is. You have to give it till it hurts, like the previous story, and give it because the need is there. You could go on with the story. The key is you have to give it with Shraddha because God has given us everything. I mean, I'll stop here. You did a beautiful presentation. I just want to thank once again Prasanna, you and Anant, and most importantly, all the friends who joined us this morning. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah. Very good. So let us close by Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnam Udakshate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vasishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.